Welcome everyone to the Committee on Legislative Operations and Elections. Thank you very much for your patience as I was presenting in another committee. So we'll start with the Secretary. Madam Secretary, please call the roll.
Assemblyman DeLong.
Present.
Assemblywoman Dickman.
Here.
Assemblyman De Silva. Assemblywoman Gonzalez.
Here.
Assemblyman Hibbets.
Here.
Assemblyman MacArthur. Assemblywoman Brittany Miller.
Here.
Assemblyman C.H. Miller.
Here.
Assemblywoman Monroe Marino.
Here.
Assemblywoman Newby. Assemblyman Yeager. Chair Gorlow.
And I am here. Thank you very much. Some housekeeping before we begin. Please remember to silence all your electronics. If you wish to testify, please come up to the table. You can sign in by the door, and then when you're testifying, push the microphone button and speak and spell your name slowly for the record. We do expect courtesy in the interactions during the meeting. We may not agree, but we need to be respectful of each and other's positions. We will be using laptops and electronics to communicate and view documents, so please do not take that as a sign of disrespect. Public comment will be taken at the end of the meeting. Each person will be limited to 2 minutes. In addition, the public may submit written testimony to the committee up to 24 hours after the meeting. If you do wish to call in, the number real quick is 888-475-4499, and the meeting ID is 873-962-21375, and then press the pound sign. Oh, never mind, it's not working right now. Hopefully when we get to public comment, it will be working. I know we were having some struggles down at the Senate, so again, hopefully that'll be working soon. So with that, we will begin with SJR 7, which proposes to amend the Nevada Constitution to remove the constitutional provisions governing the election and duties of the Board of Regents of the State University, and to authorize the legislature to provide by statute for the governance of the State University and for the auditing of public institutions of higher education in the state. And with that, we welcome Senator Dondero Loop and Assemblywoman Kasama, and you may begin when ready.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair. Thank you, Chair Gorlow and committee members. For the record, I am Marilyn Dondero Loop, representing Senate District 8 in Clark County. And I'm pleased to be joined today by Assemblywoman Heidi Kasama, representing Assembly District 2. We are jointly presenting Senate Joint Resolution 7 of the 81st session of the Nevada Legislature, the Nevada Higher Education Reform, Accountability, and Oversight Amendment. I'm sure many of you are aware of the general contents of this bill. Nonetheless, I will start with some introductory comments, and Assemblywoman Kasama will provide additional comments after me. As you know, the Nevada Constitution requires the legislature to provide for the establishment of a state university that is controlled by an elected Board of Regents whose duties are prescribed by law. Additionally, the Nevada Constitution provides for the Board of Regents to control and manage the affairs and funds of the state university under regulations established by law. Senate Joint Resolution proposes to remove the constitutional provisions that govern the election and duties of the Board of Regents and its control and management of the affairs and funds of the state university. Instead, SJR 7 would require that the legislature to provide by law for the governance of a state university. I want to stress that SJR 7 does not repeal any existing statutory provisions governing the Board of Regents, including those that provide for the election of the Board of Regents. And that's an important piece because a lot of people have confused that we are asking for the Board of Regents not to be elected, and they are. However, it would make the board a statutory body whose structure, membership, powers, and duties are governed by those existing statutory provisions, subject to any statutory changes made through the legislative process. This is no different than any other board set forth in the Nevada revised statutes. In the lead up to previous sessions, NSHE has sometimes tried to alter, control, or misrepresent information provided to lawmakers, including the Nevada Legislature. Obviously, for us, this would be unacceptable. Assemblywoman Kasama and I are encouraged by steps taken in recent years to correct many of these issues. Even so, as policymakers, we must be focused on building long-standing and stable systems of governance, not on individual personalities. We owe the citizens of Nevada a culture of accountability in all levels of government. This higher education system belongs to all Nevadans. It is our collective investment in the future of our state. As you recall, Assembly Joint Resolution 5 of the 79th session, which proposed some of the same amendments as SJR 7 of the 81st session, passed overwhelmingly in 2 legislative sessions, and recently the Senate passed SJR 7 with 20 yes votes and 1 no vote. We are grateful for the support of our colleagues. Senate Joint 7, Resolution 7 removes the Board of Regents from the Nevada Constitution, but does not substantially change any higher ed policy or procedure. It simply puts them, the Board of Regents and NCHE, on par with every other governing board and state agency created pursuant to statute. Chapter 396 of NRS would continue to exist and would still comprehensively govern the Board of Regents, and it still includes the requirement that the board be elected. The purpose of SJR 7 is twofold. One is it allows the legislature to exercise informed and measured governance of NCHE, and 2, it allows more flexibility in considering reform proposals. Constitutional governance serves as an antiquated way to oversee higher education. The reason the Board of Regents was placed in the Nevada Constitution in the first place was to access land grant funding under the Morrell Land Grant Act of 1862 without requiring action by the legislature. Ever since, we have included all the state's higher education governments and administration under this provision, despite a laundry list of studies and analysis recommending the reorganization of the state's higher education structure. It is our belief with the passage of SJR 7, we will see a resurgence of strong support for NG and the Board of Regents. Assemblywoman Kasama and I pledge our support to work with NG administration and the board on behalf of the students, their families, and our communities to have the best system in the nation. Chair Golo and committee members, this concludes my testimony, and I would like to turn the microphone over to Assemblywoman Kasama, who will provide some further information. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Don Darrell Loop, and thank you, Chair Gorlow and committee members. For the record, I am Assemblywoman Heidi Kasama, representing Assembly District 2 in Clark County. I am pleased to join Senator Don Darrell Loop in my support of SJR 7. I would like to point out, and as set forth in the ballot question arguments for AJR 5 of the 2017 legislative session, that although some other states have elected boards with constitutional status that control and manage particular institutions and programs of higher education, Nevada is the only Nevada is the only state in which a single elected board with constitutional status controls and manages the affairs and funds of the state's entire system of public higher education. In past cases before the Nevada Supreme Court, the Board of Regents have even asserted that it is a unique constitutional status, gives it virtual autonomy and thus immunity from certain laws and policies enacted by the legislature. Based on legislative testimony, these assertions have given some people the impression that the board conducts itself as a fourth branch of government, and that the board too often invokes its constitutional status as a shield against additional legislative oversight and accountability. Again, as Senator Don Darrell Loop noted, things have improved in recent years. Nonetheless, this general governance structure needs to change. A good example of this is how the university's budget is administered. While the Nevada Constitution requires the legislature to provide financial support for the operation of the state university, it also directs the board to control and manage the funds of the state university. There's a clear divide between the legislator's constitutional power to fund higher education and the board's constitutional power to direct how those funds are actually spent. It gives the board virtually unparalleled power within state government to control and manage higher education spending without the same level of legislative oversight typically applied to other executive branch agencies. Another component of SJR 7 relates to the administration of federal land grant proceeds that are dedicated for the benefit of the state university. As a bit of background, the Nevada Constitution provides that funding derived by the state of Nevada under the Morale Land Grant Act of 1862 must be invested in a separate fund and dedicated for the benefit of certain departments of the state university. If any amount of the separate fund is lost or misappropriated through neglect or any other reason, the state of Nevada must replace the lost or misappropriated amount so that the principal of the fund remains undiminished. Senate Joint Resolution 7 clarifies and modernizes existing provisions of the Nevada Constitution relating to the administration of these federal land grant proceeds. However, because the state of Nevada must administer those proceeds in the manner required by federal law, SJR 7 will not change the purpose or use of those proceeds. In closing, Senator Dondero Loop and I know that SJR 7 represents a second bite at the apple, if you will. This time, however, the language in SJR 7 is softened from AJR 5 and now calls for governance rather than control and management of the state university. Moreover, a biennial legislative audit of the state university and any other public institutions of higher education established by the legislature is also included in SJR 7. This new, gentler language and the audit provision will bring an enhanced level of transparency and trust that our system of higher education so desperately needs. With that, Chair Gorlow and members of the committee, this concludes our presentation. We urge your support of SJR 7. This is just the beginning of a long process to bring this forward to the voters, and we hope you agree that all Nevadans should have an opportunity to consider SJR 7 in 2024. We stand ready to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you very much. I do have a question from Assemblywoman Miller, so we'll start with her.
Thank you so much, Chair, for the opportunity for a question. This subject always fascinates me, not just obviously as an elected, but also as a teacher. And I've spent years teaching 5th and 6th graders about government and, loving to create and spin that love and appreciation for our government. And what kids are usually intrigued by is our 3-branch system. And the fact that, being able to quiz with them and go back and forth of which branch has the most power, because kids want to believe that one person or one branch has ultimate power. And so when they see the cyclical and that cyclicalness that goes between the 3 branches so that no one has ultimate control, that they really get fascinated and intrigued by that. Separation of powers, our 3 branches, is something that's fundamental to our entire U.S. government and our states. So when in your testimony you mentioned something as being referred to as a 4th branch, it literally is counter and different. I'm being very diplomatic in my words right now, but it is definitely against this 3-branch system and the separation of powers that we have. And so I'm just wondering, and you alluded to that some other states have situations where there are things that are within their constitution, but for this specifically, is there any other elected board, or let me put it this way, is there any other state in the United States that have their region set up like this, where it's separate, outside of any type of governance, as you would say?
Thank you very much, Marilyn Dondero Loop, for the record. I actually do not know the answer to that. There might be somebody here from Inchy that would know that answer. I don't know. I can tell you that, like I said in our testimony, it was originally done because of the land grant in 1862. But to my knowledge, most people don't have their university branches within their constitution.
Chair, may we ask legal? That's, okay. All right, thank you. Thank you so much, Senator. Thank you so much, Assemblywoman.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? I think 3 of our members would like you to start over. No, I'm just teasing.
Chair Golo, I would add one little piece that is just kind of for our teacher up there. You can tell your students that this was, when it was voted on in 2020, it was question number 1 on the ballot, and it literally lost by a difference of less than 4,000 votes. So without over 1.2 million total vote cast, it only lost by 4,000 votes.
Thank you very much. Last call for questions. Oh, Assemblyman Hibbets.
Since it was brought up in testimony, can we get legal on the record as to whether or not the university system is a 4th branch of government? I already know the answer, but I'd like to have it on the record if I may.
You are in the meeting now.
That's my introductory music.
Now you must sing your answer.
Yeah, indeed. Indeed. In response to the question, Article 3, Section 1 of the Nevada Constitution specifically says that the powers of the government of the state of Nevada shall be divided into 3 separate departments: the legislative, the executive, and the judicial. So there are 3 branches of government in Nevada, and those are the legislative, executive, and judicial. So yeah, there are 3 branches of government in state government. And in response to the question on other states, I don't know the number of other states that have constitutional provisions or have a board of regents in their constitution, but I could look into that.
Thank you very much. And we have another question from Vice Chair Miller.
Thank you, Chair, for the opportunity for a second question. With that being said by legal, then my question is, because again, we know as legislators where our authorities stop or where there's authority over us. Again, we have an executive branch, we also have a Supreme Court that can deem any law that we make unconstitutional. And we know there are gap stops for the executive branch and for this, we're the lawmaking body. I guess my question then is who actually has authority over, or where's the separation of powers, or where that ends for? Yes, please.
Yes, sure. So it's our view that the Nevada system of higher education is part of the executive branch because they execute laws that are enacted by the legislature and signed by the governor. So they implement laws. They're part of the executive branch. That being said, they're part of the executive branch, but they do have a slice of constitutional authority that is independent. And the extent of that authority, it has been discussed in case law, but they are part of the executive branch of state government.
Follow-up, Chair?
Please go ahead.
So then are we as legislators, is this legislative body enabled to enact laws that NSHE and the regents must follow?
Yes. Yes, the legislature, and I think the example that comes to mind is there was a Nevada Supreme Court case that dealt with employment issues within the Nevada system of higher education. Because that case involved generally applicable laws that apply to all state employees, those also apply to NSHE employees. So there are areas, so the legislature does have the authority to impose requirements on NSHE. There are just certain areas, defined areas that the legislature would not have that authority, and because of that constitutional status of the Board of Regents.
Okay, so because of the constitutional status, there are areas the legislature does not have authority.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, and hence, and SJR 7. Committee, any other questions? Okay, seeing none, thank you very much. You can sit back and we will bring to table, we'll open up testimony in support of SJR 7 of the 81st session. So please come to the table. Don't forget to push the microphone button, speak and spell your name slowly for the record, and you may begin when ready.
You are in the meeting now.
Well, thank you. I feel so welcomed with that. Good afternoon, Chair Gorlow and members of the committee. My name is Nick Schneider. That's SCHNEIDER, and I represent the Vegas Chamber. The Vegas Chamber is in support of SJR 7 from the 81st session. As many of you know, the Chamber has a long history of engaging in higher education matters. We're advocates for reform because workforce development alignment continues to be a top issue for our members, many of whom are the job creators of our state. The Chamber believes that the passage of SJR 7 is an essential component to reforming the state's higher education governance structure, and a better governance structure is important to aligning the needs of today's students and employers. We all recognize that the demands on our workforce are quickly changing, and we need a governance model that will adapt to meet those challenges and opportunities. We need to ensure that our higher education structure is responding to those changes within the workforce. To do nothing would be a great disservice to the approximately 100,000 students that are currently enrolled in NC institutions across the state. We believe that SJR 7 would provide much-needed clarity between the role between the Board of Regents and the state legislature. We do want to recognize that there have been some recent efforts by NC to align education as well as improve operations and community engagement, and we do appreciate that. However, for the long-term benefit of both students and employers, we need to reform our higher education governance structure. We urge your support of the passage of SJR 7 a second time so it can go to the voters in 2024. And thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else in Carson City who would like to come to the table in support of SJR 7 of the 81st session? Okay, seeing none, we'll go to Las Vegas. I don't see anyone at the table there. Broadcasting, is there anyone on the telephone who would like to testify in support? Oh, it's still not working. Even with all that, it's not working. Well, if you are listening, please submit your testimony to the committee secretary, and we will get you on the record. We apologize for the inconvenience. With that, we will close testimony in support and move to testimony in opposition. So if there's anyone in Carson City who would like to come to the table, again, speak and spell your name slowly for the record, and you may begin when ready.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the committee. For the record, I'm Dale Urquiaga. That's D-A-L-E-E-R-Q-U-I-A-G-A, and I serve as the acting chancellor of the Nevada System of Higher Education. I'm here today on behalf of the Board of Regents. Historically, the Board of Regents has opposed this resolution and the one that preceded it. In the other house, when this bill was heard in committee, either my chair or vice chair was available to testify in opposition. They were not available today, and I send their apologies. And unfortunately, you are stuck with me, and I didn't even get walk-on music. So I will do my very best. In February of this year, the board gave direction to me as chancellor to take positions on certain bills. This is a measure that the Board of Regents discussed and by consensus directed me that if I were to testify, that I would testify in opposition of this bill. And I believe that what the vice chair said in the previous house and what I heard from my board members then is that I believe the board's opposition is less about the constitutional authority, because I have been in this building a long time. I have seen the tug of war over constitutional authority between the legislature and previous boards of regents. But the comment that I've heard the most from my board in this iteration is the language that's repealed from the Constitution at the very last section of the bill. And I appreciate Senator Dondero Loop's comments about this resolution. What the voters would do would not change the election status of the board. However, with that provision removed from the Constitution, future legislatures could change the elected status and could make this an appointed board or a hybrid board, as we call a board that has both elected. And so that is the concern, that yes, you are the elected representatives of the state, so today, or the Board of Regents, and that might change if this constitutional amendment were to pass. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much for being here, Chancellor. Is there anyone else in Carson City who would like to come to the table in opposition? Okay, seeing none, we'll go to Las Vegas, and I don't see anyone there. And telephone working? Nope. All right. Again, if you'd like to submit testimony in opposition, please submit that to the committee secretary, and then we'll close testimony in opposition, open up testimony in neutral. So is there anybody here in Carson City? Thank you very much. Same drill. Speak and spell your name slowly for the record. You may begin when ready.
Good afternoon, Kent Irvin, Kentervin, on behalf of the State Board of the Nevada Faculty Alliance. The Nevada Faculty Alliance is neutral on SJR 7 from 2021. We have members on both sides, although recent history has swayed more of our members towards support. I would like to provide some background. The Nevada Faculty Alliance is affiliated with the American Association of University Professors, which advocates for academic freedom in higher education. We are generally concerned about the potential for political and partisan interference in curriculum and academic standards. In the past 2 years, academic freedom has been under unprecedented attack by state legislators and governors around the country, fortunately not in Nevada. Question 1 in 2020 had a clause regarding academic freedom, but as written, it would actually have endangered academic freedom in our view. SJR 7, the current joint resolution, is silent on academic freedom. Last session, we offered an amendment to protect academic freedom, but it gained no traction. Having a constitutionally established governing board, as in 24 of the states, provides some protection for academic freedom, but today we see both elected and appointed boards becoming highly politicized, and they do not necessarily protect the principles that we value. We all have a strong interest in having a fully functioning Board of Regents serving students in Nevada, and she has more often asserted its constitutional authority over personnel issues and its own power structure than in defense of academic freedom or educational policy. Our hope is that we can protect the principles of academic freedom in the future through collective bargaining that would help if AB 224 is enacted, and we remain willing to work with the legislators to add true protection of academic freedom to the Constitution or in state law. Regarding the numbers of constitutional versus non-constitutional board of trustees, it's 24 constitutional. About 5 of those are elected either by the people or the legislature. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Irvin. Okay, anyone else like to come to the table in neutral? Seeing none, we'll go to Las Vegas. No one there, and telephones are still not working. So again, if you have testimony in neutral for SJR 7 of the 81st session, please submit that in writing to our secretary. And with that, we will close testimony in neutral. And we will invite our sponsors to come up to the table for any final comments. Thank you. All right. Well, thank you very much for being here. And we will close the hearing on SJR 7 of the 81st session. We'll now go on to our work session. And I will turn it over to Ms. Prohl to walk us through the work session document.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Haley Prohl, Committee Policy Analyst, Nonpartisan Staff with the LCB. The first measure on work session today is Assembly Concurrent Resolution 4. It was heard in committee on April 20th. The measure directs the Joint Interim Standing Committee on Government Affairs to conduct a study during the 2023-24 interim of the use of polygraphic examinations on prospective government employees and to report the findings and any recommendations to the 83rd session of the legislature. And there are no amendments.
Thank you very much. Committee, do we have any questions or comments? Okay, seeing none, I will entertain a motion. Okay, I have a first from Assemblywoman Gonzalez and a second from Vice Chair Miller. Any questions on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Thank you very much. And we will assign the floor statement to Assemblywoman Summers Armstrong. Okay, moving on to which one? ACR 6.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The next measure is Assembly Concurrent Resolution 6. This was heard in committee on April 20th. The measure directs the Joint Interim Standing Committee on the Judiciary to conduct a study during the 2023-24 interim relating to battery, which constitutes domestic violence and is committed by strangulation. The committee must also report the findings and any recommendations to the 83rd session of the legislature, and there are no amendments.
Thank you very much. Committee, do you have any questions or comments? Okay, saying none, I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
I have a first from Vice Chair Miller. And a second from Assemblywoman Newby. Any comments or questions on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Okay, motion carries. And I will also give that floor statement to Assemblywoman Summers Armstrong. Moving on.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The next measure is Senate Joint Resolution 3. This was heard in committee on April 27th. The measure urges the United States Bureau of Reclamation to consider certain actions, alternatives, and measures for the protection and management of the Colorado River, including the pursuit of a collaboration-based framework to address the structural deficit in the Colorado River, the inclusion of mechanisms to account for evaporation and system losses, the amendment of existing federal regulations to prohibit the inefficient delivery, application, or use of water to limit unnecessary losses in the Colorado River, and consideration of the consensus-based modeling alternative submitted by Arizona, Colorado, Nevada, New Mexico, Utah, and Wyoming in the supplemental environmental impact statement process. And there is one proposed amendment by the Southern Nevada Water Authority that proposes to remove the consideration of the consensus-based modeling alternative by the U.S. Bureau of Reclamation.
Thank you very much, Ms. Prohl. Committee, do you have any questions or comments? Okay, seeing none, I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
I have a motion from Vice Chair Miller and a second from, was that Assemblywoman Gonzalez? Yes. Thank you. Any questions or comments on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Okay, motion carries, and I will give that floor statement to Assemblywoman Gonzalez. And now moving on to SGR 7.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The final measure on today's work session is Senate Joint Resolution. This was heard in committee on March 23rd, a joint meeting with the Senate Committee on Legislative Operations and Elections. The measure proposes to amend the Nevada Constitution to 1, establish a fundamental right to reproductive freedom, 2, authorize the state to regulate abortion care after fetal viability, and 3, prevent the state from penalizing, prosecuting, or taking any other adverse action against an individual based on the outcome of a pregnancy, a provider of health care under certain circumstances related to reproductive freedom, or an individual or entity for aiding or assisting another individual in exercising the individual's right to reproductive freedom. And there are no amendments.
Thank you very much. Committee, do we have any questions or comments? Speaker Yeager.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just wanted to make a quick comment. I don't remember when we heard this. It was a while ago. It was a long hearing, and want to recognize the Senate Majority Leader for bringing this. Bringing a measure like this is always tough in terms of actually presenting it and running a hearing. I am supportive of the measure because I think in a time when the federal government and the federal courts are going through a lot of changes, what this measure does is it gives the question to the Nevada voters. And much like when we talked about other constitutional measures such as the lottery here, I trust our voters to decide whether this is something significant enough that needs to be in our Nevada Constitution. Obviously, this would have to pass through the next legislative session as well, so this really is step 1 of 3 of potentially getting this into our Constitution. But I do think even with the protections we have in state statute, that's not the same as the Constitution, and I think we owe it to our voters to give them a chance to weigh in on this really important issue, so I'll be supportive for that reason.
Thank you very much. Assemblyman DeLong.
Thank you, Chair. I want to echo Speaker Yeager's comment about trusting the voters. However, I believe what we're asking them is too broad, too far-reaching all at once. If we want to trust the voters, I think a more narrow, more focused question would be more appropriate.
Thank you very much. Is there any other comments or questions? Okay, seeing none, I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
I have a first from Vice Chair Miller and a second from, was it Assemblywoman Gonzalez? Thank you. Any comments or questions on the motion? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay? Nay. Okay, please raise your hands. We have a nay from Assemblywoman Dickman, Assemblyman DeLong, Assemblyman Hibbets, and Assemblyman MacArthur. With that, the motion passes, and I will assign that floor statement to Assemblywoman Hadigi. And with that, we will close our work session, and we will open up public comment. Each person has 2 minutes for public comment. You can provide written testimony also up to 24 hours after the meeting. Is there anyone in Carson City who would like to come to the table for public comment? Okay, seeing none, we'll move to Vegas, and there's no one there. And by chance, are the phones working yet? Nope. So sorry that the phones are not working, but again, you may submit testimony and public comment in writing to our committee secretary. And with that, committees, any other comments before we adjourn? Okay, well, may the 4th be with you, and with that, we will see you next Tuesday. Meeting is adjourned. Thank you.